Yeah, so hi everyone. So as
Hello.
you know, the situation globally has changed a bit in the last few weeks, and many people, many academics, but I guess it almost seems like everybody these days is forced to work from home. And I know some of you have worked from home even before the self-imposed quarantine and work from home. Others have to cope now. And as someone, myself, as someone who prefers to work from the office, I will tell you honestly that I'm not doing very well working from home. I mean, I get things done, but there are too many distractions, too many temptations, too many, I don't know, kids come here to play or to fight or something else. And so I'm curious in your tips for myself, how can I improve my productivity? But I'm also hoping other people watching this webinar, either live or in a recording, uh, have the same questions. And so thank you so much for agreeing to share your experience, tricks and tips and suggestions. And I guess let's start with the introductions. So I'm not sure who wants to go first. Stefan, you are first on my screen.
Okay.
So would you tell us who you are, where you are?
Yeah, so hello everyone. So my name is Stefan Gaszewski, and I'm a senior lecturer in international marketing at the University of Kent, Kent Business School in the United Kingdom, UK. And yeah, I'm working from home, as probably every one of us today. And yeah, I've been involved with X-Culture for a couple of years now. I think since 2014 or so, 2015. So it's
Yeah.
thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to sharing my experience of.
And when we'll have time, hopefully we'll have time. I also hope you will share a little bit more on your general work and schedule habits. Like Stefan is one of those people who wakes up like at 4 a.m. or something like that. So
yeah, I'll tell you later more about that. Yes.
Yeah. So again, interesting, and apparently there is a whole movement of like early risers. So would be interesting to learn more. Okay, I don't know. Shelly is the next one on my screen, so I'm not sure in which order they display your name. Please go ahead.
Hi, boss. Shelly Daly, and can you hear me okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm at Lindenwood University in St. Louis, Missouri, so right in the middle of the United States. And I have worked with X-Culture, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years, including doing a semester in Bhutan where we ran X-Culture.
Yeah. We actually still stay in touch with some of those students. So yeah, they're so enthusiastic. Yes, absolutely. Very nice to see you, to meet you.
Thank you.
Tiit, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm a professor of entrepreneurship from Estonian Business School, as you see. And well, we are a private business school, and I would say I have worked from home many years in this sense that if I already have to prepare some lectures or write a research paper, I am not used to do it at workplace, but indeed to meet students, maybe online now it's a bit a new experience, because earlier we have just exchanged emails because reading takes less time than speaking or listening, but now we use more maybe such real-time tools to also get such emotional touch.
Right. And I assume you all are working from home now, right? So connecting. So I usually try to
see, I have a lot of paper printouts, articles, what I have never had any time to read through. And now I try to make some system and throw away something and then read also.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, for many years, I've been for 11 years in Greensboro, and up until recently, I didn't even have a pencil at home. I mean, my office is not far away. I would just go to the street and go to the office. Now, all of a sudden, I have to adjust. Michael and Ricia, I'm not sure if you're able to talk. We don't see your picture. Would you introduce yourselves too?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Michael.
Okay, yeah. This is Mahesh, Michael Raisangani, a professor in the College of Business at Texas Women's University, teaching the graduate program for the MBA and the executive MBA. And I've been a hybrid. We're working both in the office and at home. And I'm so glad, Vas, that you are doing this webinar. I think it'll be helpful, hopefully hearing all the panelists and ideas and sharing what works for me, and also some of the research I've been seeing at the World Economic Forum that I wanted to share today on how to prevent some of this anxiety staying home. I think that's one of the challenges we tend to get anxious about. One, the new environment, and two, what's going on outside in the macro environment. So hopefully we'll touch on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ricia, are you able to talk? I see your microphone is muted. And yeah, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm Ricia Charles. I'm at St. George's University in Grenada, and I teach international business at the undergraduate level. Right. So this whole experience of going online is new for us because most of our students are face-to-face in the undergraduate program. Our graduate program is all online.
Yeah. If you are wondering how to work from home, how not to lose concentration, if I were where Ricia is, my question would be, how can you work when you live in a paradise right there in the Caribbean, you know, with the perpetual summer and beautiful weather and the beaches? I don't know, Ricia, how you get work done. I mean, I would just probably just sit on the beach all day long and not work at all. So it's a very beautiful area. All right, so let's talk a little bit about working from home. So I'm not sure who wants to start, and I deliberately want to keep it a little informal. So I guess we will just share our experiences without any formal presentations. So who wants to start with some general tips and tricks? Yeah.
I could go first if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so here I just wanted to touch on, I think, some of the ideas of maintaining a schedule. And I know, Wes, you mentioned this is a new environment for you. So I'll touch on things such as sleep, work, your childcare. If you mentioned you had kids that certainly also need your time at home, exercise, and then recharging. So those are the points I want to touch on before we talk about some of the anxiety issues. Sleep, again here, no news here, just I think the fact you're not commuting, even though some may have a shorter commute, the time and I guess getting ready for work and not having to drive to work, that would be used perhaps for extra sleep, which is great for your immune system and also for your overall for preparation and being, I guess, preparation for work at home and being productive at home. And it's, I guess the key is to figure out the proper sleep schedule. I'm sure Stefan would agree with this because you want to make sure you determine what you will need to get up to begin work and then taking into account your now reduced number of morning commitments. So from there, you work backwards. For example, if you normally aim for 7 hours of sleep and need to wake up by 6 a.m., you plan to go to bed by 11 p.m. at the latest. And then you're giving yourself 1 hour before bedtime to wind down and prepare for sleep, which means no screen time. And you've got the alarm on your phone to begin getting ready for priming your mind for the sleep. That may be another way to remind you. It's, say you start that alarm at 10 p.m. so that by 11 p.m. you could be ready for sleep.
Michael, can I ask you or everybody, we actually had that conversation in Denmark last year, I believe, with Stefan and a few other people about sleep. I know it's not related to work per se, but I guess it's an important component. How many hours do you normally sleep in a given day, everybody? Like, for example, I need to get my 9 hours. If I get 8, I can still function 7. I would be completely, will not be able to do anything on that day. You, Michael, it sounds like you said you sleep, what, about 7 hours a day?
Yeah, about 7, although I agree with you, 9 would be preferred. It's just with kids and everything else, it's sometimes difficult to budget that many hours.
How about others? Stefan, you wake up so early and sometimes you are up like at 1 a.m. my time, so it must be so.
I mean, yeah, so I probably get about 7 hours, so similar to Mahesh. I go to bed also quite early, so I go to bed around 8 or 9 p.m., but I get up at 4, and sometimes a bit earlier, but I try to not get earlier up than 4.
Not earlier than 4. Yeah, so how about you, Shelley?
I would prefer about 6. And if I start going above 6, I actually have a hard time getting moving the whole day. So I actually need a little less. So for me, you were saying the commute that you're not using to use that for extra sleep. I'm using that commute time to exercise or to do something else for me, not to just jump into work a half hour early. but to use that half hour for something I want to do, whether that's lingering over coffee, reading the newspaper, exercising. So it's kind of a bonus.
Mhm. And how about you, Teet? So I'm just curious, what's the...
Well, evidently it a bit depends on age also. So in normal situation, I can't follow example of Winston Churchill during the Second World War to have such a snap during outer lunch. But now, if I are more at home, don't need to commute to workplace at any day during the week, so I can take a small snap. But before that, I do some kind of cycling trip. I just today also had a cycling trip. In Estonia, we don't have such tough rules as in Italy. Many people are doing outside exercises, walking, although we had today around 0 degrees Celsius. But actually, streets are not so crowded, but all the parks and just outskirts of city are, if we can call Tallinn a city, only 400,000 people, are quite crowded. So you have to be a bit careful to follow on these trails, such social distance. But about working from home, I think it's very important to think about still a plan during the day. That okay, how much time you devote to news, because there is now a bit such an excitement how the coronavirus situation is changing, but there are so many different channels which basically speak the same thing. So not to devote too much time on news. Then think, okay, what are the articles or something what you need and to read and reflect. Then we have some online classes. Then maybe you have to just chat with your friends, or so to structure somehow the day, and even to have some kind of routine.
Yeah. I would like to also introduce Akhtar here. So he joined a little bit later. So Akhtar, can you tell us where you are and who you are? So yes, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yep.
Am I audible enough?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I am Akhtar Ali. I am from India. I am teaching at Ramchandra International Institute of Management. I am dealing with marketing and general management subjects, especially with subjects like entrepreneurship and MIS. I am associated to X-Culture since last 7 years. I've been first working with X-Culture in 2013, and since then, I am just getting associated with it, and almost around 200 plus students under me have completed their project with X-Culture.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you so much. So we talked a little bit about sleep, so let's get back to the most important question. So how do you avoid distractions at home? For me, as I said, there are two very big distractions. One, the coffee maker in the fridge is very close, and I go and get a little snack too often when I work from home. And second, so much is going on at home. The kids are always, fighting or playing. My wife is nearby. So it's very hard to just sit and focus on work and concentrate and work on something for a few hours. What are the suggestions you would give to someone like myself to avoid those distractions?
Okay, for us, avoiding distraction is one of the main work. So while working from home, we keep several things in mind. First and foremost thing, we play a soft music, not jazz or not rock music, but we play some Indian soft music at the background. It really helps us to avoid distraction. Other than that, I prepare a to-do list or a checklist, which makes me work easy, which make my work easier. I prepare or get dressed for the office. It usually we don't go to office on the
when you work
working
at home?
Even
when
I am working at home. Yes, at least half of the portion. At least I wear a blazer or something like that, so that whenever we are at home, we have a feel of office. Then I usually ask my children to get involved in certain kind of artwork, drawing sketches, or they are playing music in the room, so that I can avoid that kind of distraction. And I take the help of my family. It helps me a lot while I am at home. So they take care of the kids, I am taking care of my work. And I have also implemented the impeccable calendar. So I have prepared a small impeccable calendar in my room. I keep the chart ready, and whensoever it requires certain kind of important points, I just make those points and then just write those points. And whensoever I have the time, I use this kind of stuff to make myself away from the distraction which is happening.
And for the calendar and the to-do list, do you just use good old paper, or you use some sort of an app on your phone?
I use paper as well, and certain time Doodle helps me with the same. So Doodle has a better calendar which helps me to keep my times, and I can make my schedule with the help of that, so that whensoever I have the important time, it reminds me, and accordingly I can perform my work.
Okay, okay, well, that's practical. Yeah. Shelly, how about you? What do you do to stay away from the fridge and distractions?
We won't talk about the fridge right now, but I've been very good about that. But about the calendar, I think what's important is that you not only put work on the calendar, but you put other things. So put things like what your reward for that day is going to be, when you're going to exercise, how much exercise you want to do, or do you want to do sit-ups today, or do you want to go out for a walk? Do you want to contact 2 or 3 friends? But I try to make my calendar when I'm at home not just about work, because then I start stressing out about the things that aren't work and when they're going to fit in. If I have everything on my calendar and I just use paper and I try to just kind of break it down. So for today, I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z for work, and I want to do this with the kids, and I want to contact these 2 friends, and I want to make sure I do this for myself, whether it's exercising or reading. So getting detailed about that calendar, I think, would be helpful.
Can I ask you, so I actually have heard that advice before and I even tried it, but one thing that I wasn't sure is, so when you schedule time, let's say exercise or time with kids, do you assign specific time, or you just have like a to-do list and you go, start the next thing when you're done with the previous thing? Or do you know that today from, let's say, 3:30 to 4:30, you will be exercising?
I don't get that detailed because right now, with the weather in St. Louis, we're also very cold here too. And so sometimes I just wait, and if there's a break in the rain or the clouds or that sort of thing, I will just put a grid on my piece of paper, maybe 5 or 6 blocks. And in each block is what I want to accomplish for the day. And so if I get a break in the weather, then I'll take that exercise break or that walk. Some things have to have a time block, but I find that if I try to get that strict, that didn't work for me. If I said I'm going to exercise from 3 to 4, sometimes something comes up and then everything blows up. So I try to build in a little flexibility, and then I put times where there has to be time.
Again, can I ask, again, maybe somebody has, this is a very important issue, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to sort of be selfish here, but if I can show my screen here. So this is I used to do Microsoft To Do for my to-do list, and I have a bunch of things that I need to do. And the problem is that I never can accomplish what I planned for the day. And as a result, it would be like 6 p.m. and I'm still trying to get things done that I was planning to do. And then there is no time for anything else. And before I know it, I didn't go to the gym, or I didn't spend time with my kids. So I thought about maybe allocating those other activities, again, putting them at a specific time that I know that, like from 4 to 5, I will play with my kids, but I'm not sure that would be the best strategy. So any advice on kind of calendar and to-do list management?
So Vas, what I suggest here is, and I struggle with the same, it's never enough. There's only, 8 days in a week and 24 hours in a day. So the challenge is to keep this as you would in the office. Okay, your schedule at home needs to be just like it was in the office. And if you were working out, say, before you go to work, or after you come back from work, or maybe in your lunch hour, try to keep that same schedule if you can, as best as possible. And I know Sherry mentioned the weather playing a role, and here you have to maybe improvise by doing something in one of the rooms in the house. That could be the makeshift home gym, if you would. And plenty of resources online to do this at home. Lots of YouTube videos or others that one could be using. I know the public libraries are closed, but we could get this online and follow along. And at least get that in. And sometimes it could be an activity with the family. So you're still spending time with them. So they also need the same fitness as you would. So this could be an opportunity in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Tita, I guess. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, about this time management, I think Nordnet has been a classical time management principle that you have to have some buffer for important new opportunities. If you plan 100% of your time and you don't have any buffer, you can't be entrepreneurial. You can't react to new information. So it applies also at home. But what I guess I have to admit, I also so far I have used, in addition to Microsoft Calendar, and we have also other tools at the Estonian Business School for scheduling, for time management, but still I have had such a thing. But I think many people, as a result of this coronavirus just period, if it will be long, switch over to fully online calendars, simply because information, what comes in, is in such a format, it's more easy to fix it in a calendar, as for instance, request for this webinar. So I think that will be some kind of trend that people maybe start buying less paper calendars and using more online tools. But indeed, I think it's a different situation now about family. Not my wife is psychologist, and actually she's running another session, online mentoring session in another room just now. So we even have now maybe less contact time than before. So I don't see it as a big problem. And also my employer at the Estonian Business School, we always have free coffee. There is a coffee room where we come to chat. So I think if you only have just one person with whom you can chat, it's not so much overload. But yes, indeed, it's depending what you have in a refrigerator. So if you have many snacks, especially such unhealthy snacks, it can be a problem. So I recommend to buy more healthy snacks, and maybe then it will be not so dangerous.
Okay. How about you, Stefan? You have some very interesting habits.
I think what is really important to me personally, and I think there's also research surrounding that, is the morning routine. So as I mentioned before, I get up quite early at 4. There are several reasons for that. First of all, I am a morning person. I'm an early riser. I'm quite creative. I enjoy the darkness, the silence. There's no distractions at all. And I even have coined a term now.
Your family is still sleeping at that time, right?
Yes, yes, of course, of course.
So you
I mean,
before they wake up, right?
Yes, yes. I've got 2 children, aged 10 and 6, and my wife. They get up around 7:30.
So you kind of get.
I've got 3 hours, and I have a term actually now, the golden 3 hours in the morning, and that's basically my own time. I don't use it only for work. So as I said, I've got my morning routine. There are certain things I do every morning. I do some meditation, some mindfulness. I do a diary, a journal every day. I read the Bible as well. And these exercise, usually I try to do that also. Now the weather's getting better. So there's certain things that I try to do like a routine, but then there's other things also that come up. So sometimes today I was chatting to somebody in Australia, and with the time difference, it's actually quite good. Otherwise, I could not have Skype chats with people in other time zones. So from a work perspective, if you talk to someone in Australia at 5 a.m., it's afternoon 4 p.m. for them. But if you say get up at 9, or it's very hard to schedule a meeting. So I've got that time for me in the morning, and also I try to do work. If I'm working, I'm usually quite productive in the morning, and I try to do the things that are a little bit, that require some creativity or some, brain, where you have to use your brain. Because then I think the good thing I feel if I do something in the morning, it's also a psychological effect. So, I mean, now I'm staying at home, but if I go then at 7:30, 7, I wake up my children, my wife, I've got my second breakfast, and then I go to work normally. I take the kids to school, and I'm at work And already, I already have a sense of accomplishment at that time, which is quite good for me personally. The day has started well. I did some exercise. I feel refreshed. I write down my diary, things that I want to do, things I'm grateful for. So that kind of sets the tone. And I noticed if I don't do my morning routines, so if I travel, for example, or if I don't get to do that, then the day also was sometimes differently and not as productive as it could be. So it's a sort of habit. I think someone mentioned before, habit and routines. I think it's really important, and especially now that you are working from home. I mean, there's a lot of distractions. I'm not saying I'm getting distracted, but I think certain hours of the day, and these are my morning hours, they are really important to me. So I try to keep them for me. And then if during the day, I mean, I'm happy to also go out there with my children and play for an hour. Yeah. I don't mind. I mean, and they want, of course, I mean, they're also now at home because the schools are closed. But I think
you touched upon this very interesting issue. So you basically front load your day with work.
Yes.
So that you have that sense, because I usually work late at night. Like, for example, I went to bed at about 2 a.m. because I got those 3 hours of real work done when everybody went to bed. But I had to spend the whole day with guilt on the one hand because I haven't done anything yet. And on the other hand, I was kind of able to procrastinate because I knew that I can then work like through the night. But I think, you kind of reverse it. And
I mean, I changed that schedule a couple of years ago after my children were born, because obviously as a new parent, there's always problem with sleep. And I noticed I wasted a lot of time in the evenings, and went to bed late and then got up later. And I wasn't productive in the evenings anyway. So now that I changed, also I don't need an alarm clock in the morning, so I wake up naturally. It's my whole biorhythm has changed a bit, my body clock, my internal body clock. And yeah, I find it quite productive. And even weekend, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter. I get up at early morning. I enjoy that, and it's good for me.
Yeah.
And it may be different for different people, Vas. So even though you say you work late, some people are more productive that way. So it might vary by the individual. The key is that you are focusing on getting the adequate amount of sleep to be able to function.
It's important, yes, I agree.
As long as that happens. But I think in this, I just wanted to touch on this anxiety paradox, because obviously most of us are anxious about this. We hear about this virus with estimated 1.4% or 2.3% death rate, and then it could be dangerous for everyone. Yes, it's all true, except probably speaking of scheduling and some of the best practices, it's better to limit yourself to 30 minutes of coronavirus news in a day. And the reason, and this is recommendation from the World Economic Forum, because they've got 7 science-backed coping strategies. And one that struck me is this paradox I mentioned, the anxiety paradox. Essentially, it states that anxiety rises proportionately to how much one tries to get rid of it. And they go back to Carl Jung that put it, what you resist persists. So I think the important thing is understanding, like, if we are going to be, distracting ourselves by, the drinking or eating, the refrigerator you mentioned, or watching Netflix more than usual, that's hoping to calm these fears. That's only going to work, that's only going to be a temporary fix, and it backfires. So what we really need to be thinking about is some of the points we've talked about: exercise, sleep, and staying productive as we do in the office, perhaps. And connecting, I think the part we want to touch on, which again is something I have not been doing enough, maybe, and maybe the other panelists can chime in on this if that's something they do, to looking at connecting to your life's purpose and the sources of meaning, the why. Be it spirituality, Stefan mentioned meditation, relationships, the pursuit of a cause. So discovering the why of life can go a long way in helping us deal with this unavoidable anxiety. So I just wanted to touch on that, in addition to, of course, the points we made. And I yield the phone, the mic to the next person.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about a few other things like setting up your home office and communicating with your colleagues. But before we move on, any other tips and tricks on avoiding distractions when working from home? Yeah, Akhtar?
Well, I wanted
Yeah.
to add, so indeed this
Okay.
schedule is important, but at the same time, if we think about such activities, what we have now, we have to accept that, let's say, in USA, in your time zone, it's 9 o'clock a.m. In Estonia, it's 3 o'clock p.m. That's not a problem. That's not so big difference. But I recall a bit what the problems I have had with my students in X-Culture. And some of them are very frustrated, even have been frustrated, even without any coronavirus, that they want to have a chat with some other team members who are in the other continent, and they have just day and my students have night. So what I have tried to explain them, there should be also some proportion between real-time communication or synchronous communication and using some kind of cloud services or even old-fashioned email for such communication where you don't need to respond at once. So maybe it's also one aspect if we continue to work in at home, especially from home.
Yeah, good point. Akhtar, you had a tip on
Yeah.
avoiding
It is very important to know your distractions. For us in India, there are three basic distractions. First is television, news channels, or television serials, or something like that. The biggest distractions are social media. Indians are used to social media like anything. Even if they are working in the offices, they used to be on social media like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And the biggest most distraction is kids. We can't avoid kids, but at least we can avoid television and social media for the sense of working. And whenever we are working from home, we must at least avoid television and social media so that we can view a productivity in our work.
Yeah. I don't know, Rita, and we have also Valerie here. Valerie Bell is one of our professors who participated in X-Culture, was helping us with preparation for Singapore, the event there, and unfortunately, as you know, we had to cancel it. So Valerie, what are your tips and tricks on being productive when working from home?
Well, I was a consultant for many years and actually worked from home for many years and actually worked across continents, going basically 6 weeks in China, 2 weeks in North America, where I had to work from home, and then going back to Asia for another 6 weeks. So I did that for years. And one of the biggest things that you find in working from home is the isolation. You know, yes, you have your family around you and that sort of thing, but it's not the same as when you're in the office and you have that mental stimulation from the office. So what we're doing actually at my college is we have set up a specific time, a couple of times a week, where we actually interact with our colleagues. So we call it a coffee break, and we set a special time during the day where we actually have a Zoom conference call, and a number of us get on the conference call, and we just chit chat about kind of what we're doing, how our classes are going, all of those sorts of things. And we don't stay on it very long, half an hour at the most, but it just gives that little extra socialization that we miss by going in and out of the office. So that would be my big tip. I would say that that's really, it's important to remember that you need that and you need that time as well. So we've tried to book it early in the morning before we, you know, have to start classes and that sort of thing. And it's probably easier to book it either early in the day or late in the day when people aren't teaching. So I'd suggest that you try that.
An idea, yeah.
The other thing is get dressed. So, you know, one of the key things that the HR people will tell you if you're ever downsized out of a job is when you're looking for a job, it has to become your job. So you know, don't answer emails or talk to people or whatever if you aren't prepared to do the job. And if you get dressed rather than staying in your pajamas or whatever, you are much more likely to take a professional attitude towards what you're doing. And I think that was another good suggestion. Actually, my daughter's in HR and she suggested that. And I think those are two important things we need to remember. This can be a very isolating experience. I actually had the early version of SARS when I lived in China. And so I've gone through this once before. I'm completely self-isolating here because I have severe asthma. And so I'm in the small percentage that is immunocompromised, and certainly having already had SARS, I don't want this again. So I learned a lot from that experience, and that was, you know, I recovered. It's important to follow the guidelines that the governments are giving us, and to do our part in terms of that. It's I worry about people who are not following those guidelines, because obviously they're the people who are going to end up with the disease. A friend of mine is in Hawaii right now, trying to get home actually to Canada, and she said the governor there is going on radio and pleading with other Americans to go home. They feel that, you know, because they have a couple of weeks off, that rather than stay home where there might be coronavirus, they will go to Hawaii and lay on the beach. And so the governor's pleading with them to go home. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Valerie, great points. I think this is Mahesh, Michael. I think they may have followed what happened in Bondi Beach in Sydney. Apparently, a lot of people also decided after they were tested, they thought they're immune. I mean, they're fine, they're immune from this virus, and they all decided to congregate at Bondi Beach.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's talk a little bit about home offices then. So I'm not sure if you are, do you have separate room in your house that you call an office? Does it look like an office? My problem is I have a fairly big house, but I don't have a dedicated room that I would call an office. Like somehow my rooms are huge, but there are not many of them. And so I can't really, you know, isolate myself. How about you? So do you set up a home office that is actually an office, or you just work on the kitchen table somewhere or in the living room? Like, what's your approach here? I don't know.
I have such a, just, you see, my window is upstairs, such a small room in such a multi-store row house, and my wife also has such a small office room, so it's not a big problem. But indeed, my son has 3 kids, and for him it's an issue that although he has a separate room at home, he's doing many projects, EU projects, and still kids often come and you have to motivate them to do something on their own.
Yeah.
So that's indeed a challenge. So maybe these people who have small kids, they should have more tricks how to engage kids to do their own business.
All right. Shelley,
Ross, you bring up an excellent question on this, and I'm with you on this in terms of, you know, having office space. That's a great idea, except I'll be honest, I get bored in just one place. So we've got about 12 rooms here, but I kind of migrate from different rooms. Right now I'm in the patio outside. I mean, just want to get some fresh air. So sometimes, yeah, there is a home office which has all the, you know, the files, the cabinets and such, but I think I get bored sitting in one place. So that feels like prison, so I like to move around.
Okay, all right. Shelley, how about you?
So I have a home office, but when the kids were younger, like many Americans, we homeschooled and I worked from home. And we had a rule that if it looked like I was working or if I was at my desk, I just asked them to approach and kind of quietly hold their finger up before, as opposed to just interrupting. And my daughter's in med school now, and she reminded me of that rule as I kind of kept barging into her room where she was working. And she said, Mom, if I seem to be working, maybe you could just approach and wait for me to engage. So I think if we just set some rules, whether we're in a home office, whether we're at a table where we have our computer, and I will be honest, I don't think it's just about children. Sometimes it's the spouse that has to learn those rules along with the children, because my children seem to learn it faster, and I realized I hadn't taught my spouse the same rule, and so he was the one interrupting me more often. And so the one thing I'd like to just give a hint on is go to blogs, homeschool blogs, and see what ideas they have for engaging your children. Right now, Audible, which is through Amazon, is allowing free membership to all children. So you can download books. It doesn't have to be about kids being in front of a computer or TV. They can download books. Great Hall Productions has great books. They can, you can say, hey, this is our hour. Everybody's going to work, and your work is you're going to listen to this book on tape for 30 minutes, and then you're going to go clean the bathrooms for 30 minutes. You can give tasks during a very specific amount of time where you maybe have a webinar or you have something you have to accomplish. But as long as you're purposeful and everybody understands what the rules of engagement are, you've taken a huge step to being productive, as well as just still liking each other when you guys come out of isolation in a few weeks.
Yeah, my kids are 13 and 16 almost, and I don't know, they sometimes fight, sometimes just jump, and I don't know, hard to keep them busy. And yeah. Any other tips on setting up your home office? Yeah, Carl, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you don't have the home office with you, so you can use your balcony as a home office. I am using that. I have captured my entire balcony. I don't allow anyone to come over there. I have just a recliner over there. I use my laptop. I use internet facility and a fresh air. So that definitely helps us to avoid distractions, as well as it definitely helps us to work and to focus on your work. So whensoever we are working in the environment where we have to use the balcony or where we are using the living room, if we don't have the offices, then of course I suggest people to use the balconies. That will be a better way.
That's a good point. Yeah. I sometimes work also outside on the patio, but then again, you have so many distractions. The birds are chirping and the squirrels are running around, and my daughter is jumping on the trampoline, so sometimes it's even worse than sitting inside. All right, any tips on using tools for online, sort of to staying in touch with your colleagues? So Valerie mentioned Zoom, and we're using Zoom now, but
using Zoom.
is there any other technology when you're working from home to make it easier? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Slack will be a better option in that case. Whensoever we want to communicate with our people, with our colleagues at least. So we need a dedicated email box, and Slack will definitely help us in that case. Zoom, of course, everyone is using. If you are using Skype in India, then I would prefer people to use Skype Lite, because that is a lighter version and people can use it from the mobile phone. Other than that, Dropbox and Google Docs can be a better option to share documents with them. And of course, we can use Grammarly. We are staying in India, and Indians are pretty terrible at writing and communicating with the help of emails. So Grammarly app will definitely help them to write a professional mail and communicate with the people.
That's good suggestions. Yeah. Any other suggestions as far as technology goes? Like one thing that I do when okay, go ahead, Stefan. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So what my university is now doing, they just bought a license for Microsoft Teams. And apparently that is quite popular. I talked to some colleagues from University of Reading. They're also using that. And I had a brief look just last week, and it seems quite good. And I may use it for my students as well. It's a good way to interact. It's
so
quite
is it like Slack, or what does it do? Because I get advertisement for it all the time, but I cannot figure out what it does. So is it more like Slack and Trello, or is it something else?
I'm not familiar with Slack. I mean, Microsoft Teams, you can, there's a chatting function, you can share files, you can call each other. So there's a whole contact list from the university. So it's in a way similar to Blackboard, that you can share the files, but it has the added facility with chatting and direct messaging people. And you can form your own teams, like your classroom, for example. I haven't used it myself, but I heard from some people that it's quite good. Has anybody used Microsoft Teams from here?
Based on the description, it sounds like it's one of those project management software like Slack, Trello, Basecamp. So they seem to have more or less the same purpose. What helps?
And I bet it integrates with Microsoft Project.
Yeah.
Mm.
One tool
with the OneDrive as well, I think.
Yeah. One thing that helps me working from home, and this one actually, you know, I think it may be university specific, but I use VPN a lot. So when I'm working on campus, I automatically get access to all kinds of facilities, like, you know, the library, you know, downloading the files for, you know, like the articles for free, getting access to my shared drives, you know, we have some. Mm-hmm. So when I'm at home, I don't have all of that, but if I use VPN, all of a sudden the computer thinks that I'm still on campus. And so it allows me to at least, you know, access all those software that I normally would need to use. So again, but that's probably institution specific, so I'm not sure how interesting it is for others. So, all right. Any other tips on setting up your home office or making it, you know, sort of more stimulating for work?
I think generally, I mean, I don't have my own home office. I'm now in the living room. I've got a desk in the living room, which I use, but I feel also, I mean, now it's, of course, it's different because we have to work from home because of the coronavirus. But I feel also sometimes I can also work quite productively in other places, in coffee shops or somewhere. As long as I have my laptop and my you know, some music, maybe some headphones. So I mean, I do like the routine in the morning, as I said before, but then apart from that, I'm quite flexible, and I also like to just yeah, I've got some favorite coffee shops in Reading which I like, and I think that's also, I think, important when you work from home, that you take breaks as well, because if you always sit same spot and you're just snacking, or it's important that you get up and walk around a little bit. I think that's important.
Can I ask about that? So Stefan, you brought up a very important issue, and I think now with all the quarantine and all coffee shops closed, I'm not sure if it's available, but sometimes it's about working from home, and sometimes it's not having an office and having to work from somewhere. Yes. And I know my wife, she always, when she needs to get something done, she's a graduate student. And by the way, we married a long time ago. I didn't marry my student. She just went back to school. But she prefers to work from somewhere outside home, and she would go either to a library or to a coffee shop. Yeah. And so I don't know, what's your take on that? So she
I think it's also, because I don't, I think because I don't have my own like home office, I get distracted all the time if I work from home, because my kids, if they're at home, then I don't think I could work very productively at home. I mean, right now they are outside, so otherwise it would be quite noisy, probably.
So your advice basically is, if you have to work from home, don't work from home, right?
It depends if you have your own home office. I mean, if you can shut the door and then, but I think if your kids are at home, especially if they're younger, it's very hard to avoid those distractions. I mean, I don't know, it depends really, but I think for me personally, it would be difficult, I think, to focus. And I think that's also, I mean, as I said, I try to work in the morning. I try to do a lot of work in the morning, so I have a bit of leeway during the day now, and that helps.
Yeah. All right. So any other tips and suggestions on productivity in general, not necessarily related to working from home? Anyone? Like one of the things I can share with you, I'm not sure if it would be interesting to you. But I know, and I think Stefan, you were the one who told me that some time ago, that you use a paper-based calendar or to-do list, because there is something special about sort of taking a pen and writing it down. And so what I did, I started experimenting with the paper calendars. I actually like the one from Michael Hyatt, but I hated the fact that I need to carry with me another piece of paper and a pen that I need to use. And so what I did, I sort of invented a cheating system. So I used Galaxy Notes, which is basically like a Galaxy phone, but it has a stylus. And so what I did, I created a PDF copy of my calendar. And so it looks like exactly like the one that is on paper. And so I can write here using a real pen. So it kind of does exactly the same job. I made some changes to the PDF file. So the one that I bought wasn't quite, what I liked. I needed some extra stuff. And so this way I sort of use a pen and and a paper, but in this case, it's on my phone. It's always with me. And it's very easy for me to work it that way. And so this way I don't have to carry anything else with me. But I do go through the act of actually writing down things with my hand as opposed to just typing it on the screen. So I'm not sure if it's useful to anyone because again, most phones cannot do it because you have to have a stylus. And so you basically, the only phone that does it well is Galaxy Note, but maybe somebody will find it useful.
That's an excellent tip. And Vas, I also want to remind the tools that you shared with us yesterday on being productive. All those are excellent tools for us to use. And you also have it on the video.
Yeah, and by the way, on that yesterday's ones, we got a few more suggestions for tools and teaching online, so we'll add them to the description later today. Any other tips on productivity and getting things done in general, maybe not necessarily from home?
Just recharge is so important to make sure we hit the reset button and recharge, and whatever that activity might be, and it may have nothing to do with work, but maybe it's a particular hobby that you enjoy. It could be exercise, whatever gets you recharged, and that's so important. And allocating that on the schedule is extremely important. Sometimes we get too busy and we forget that, and that actually impacts the productivity negatively. So I would just say, please do have the recharge button on the schedule.
Yeah. Sorry, your microphone is muted. I think you need to unmute it first.
Because you are all younger and might have many kids, so I promoted one Estonian startup which has such educational games, online games for kids, and partly they also ask kids to do something in physical world. So maybe we could share also such applications, how to just engage kids during our home office hours. So if somebody would promote some US
So
tool,
you're talking about this Alpha
Indian
Kids, right? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Alpha Kids?
Yeah,
Yeah.
try to propose alternative tools. So that would be very important. So, for instance, in Estonia, we have such a situation that we have quite heavy workload for parents now, because they have to work together with their kids who are now all engaged in just online school. And it's sometimes good for parents to learn math again.
Right.
But indeed, this Alpha Kids, it's more for younger kids who don't go to school, who don't have any school classes now. So
For the older kids, I can suggest, as Shelley talked about that, Audible. So my older son is very much into Audible now. I'm an avid audiobook listener. In fact, I have some sort of like a very special status on Audible. Apparently, I'm one of the most, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But now my kid got into this as well, and so spends a few hours a day listening to audiobooks. And actually, we're now listening to the same book, so we can discuss. Again, I'm not sure if it's for everyone. I know some people just don't like audiobooks, period. And then maybe some kids don't like reading in general. But at least for my son, it keeps him busy for a few hours a day, just listening to books. So that seems to be a good trick. So
That's an excellent tip. Thank you, Vas.
yeah. And I didn't know that they offer free membership. Again, if you're not into it, you might want to try it. Another thing that I discovered, again, talking about audiobooks, about a year ago, I discovered that my library, the city public library, there is this app called Overdrive that allows you to connect to the library and you can borrow books. And so there is hardly any book that is not available through the public free library that I need to go to Audible and buy. I used to spend literally about $1,000 a year on buying books on Audible. And then last purchase I made, I paid, they give you like the special price. If you buy, you know, like a whole year membership, they give you like extra few credits. So I got like 15 or 16 credits in advance. But now there is so much stuff available this year through the library that I hardly ever have to go to Audible. So I still have like 9 unused credits and I'm almost done with that year, which is a little unusual for me. But again, if you don't want to spend $15 per book, which is kind of standard price for Audible, so you sometimes get better price, but you know, that's the kind of credit price. You check out, at least in Canada and in the United States, you most likely will be able to get access to your library books, which still gives you thousands and thousands of books for free. So, yeah. All right, anything else? We have a few people in the audience watching and we never gave them a chance to ask. So if you guys have any questions, you can put them in Q&A. I would like to do a quick introduction for everyone here. Julie, I'm not sure if you're able to talk, if you have the microphone, but I'm going through one very important productivity experiment of my own, critically important. So I decided to hire a personal executive assistant. So while we do have teaching assistants at school and we have secretaries assigned to our department, and we have all kinds of colleagues and all kinds of other things, at some point I just realized that I'm not keeping up with the flow of email and other routine and management tasks. And so for about a month, Julia has been working with me as basically, yes, sort of my personal assistant. So she's helping a lot XCulture and she's managing. So those of you who know Simone, so he has been the administrator for XCulture for many years and will be graduating next month. And we are losing him after about 6 years of working together. So Julia will be taking over most of those duties as well. So she will be the person of contact for general inquiries about XCulture, like all that email traffic, everything. But she also has been helping me personally with many things. And so far, it seems to be totally worth it. I mean, it does cost you a little money, but it's for every hour that we spend, that she spends, she basically saves me that time. Like, for example, she's been cleaning my email account. She's not quite there yet in terms of, answering all emails. And there are many emails that I have to handle, like if it's research related, but at least she processes all the routine inquiries from the students. And then there are some emails that are, like just thank you notes that I don't even need to react. So she just, reads them, deletes them. And I don't even need to see them and waste valuable seconds on that time. And so one thing we had a problem with was getting her access to my email account because, and I suspect that would be the case for many American universities. So when somebody tries to log into your account from a different country, they think that it's some sort of a malicious attack and they block your account. Plus, again, you might want to keep your account to yourself just to be sure. So, but turns out there is this option in Google called a delegate. And so most of our emails are powered by Google, even if it's .edu. And so what we did is we created another university email address for Julia, and then I delegated my email to her. So now she can switch between the accounts. She can see my messages. She can reply to them if needed, but at the same time, the accounts are still separate. So I'm still experimenting with that. I got this book by Michael Hyatt, World-Class Executive Assistant. Lots of useful tips on how to sort of, have an assistant. And so if you have some budget for that, it seems like it's a very good advice. And honestly, sometimes she also keeps me sort of disciplined. Like, so we meet pretty much every morning, she gives me a quick update on, what happened while I was sleeping, because she's in Ukraine, so she's like 7 hours ahead of me. But also for me, that also creates some discipline because now I have to be ready and done for those meetings. So kind of prompts me to get some things done because otherwise I would be just basically hanging around, drinking coffee or doing something else. Now it sort of disciplines me to have an earlier start in my work day. So again, we'll see how things go, but it seems to be working out very well so far. So.
Hey,
right.
Wes, one thing, Wes, I remembered when you were speaking, something Mark Cuban said here in Dallas, the owner of the Mavericks. He said, swallow the frog early. So when you wake up or whatever the most important part is that either Julia points out or you think needs to be addressed, do that first before we get caught in some of the smaller items. So I think that was good advice coming from Mark.
Actually, can I ask you about that? So there is one issue that I still didn't figure out. So, and I'm not sure if it's the same problem for you, but maybe you know the answer to the question. So I have a lot of meetings every day. So I would probably have 4 or 5 meetings like this one during any day. So there would be like one webinar with a company, you know, through XCulture, with students, you know, some introduction session. Then there would be a few research meetings, you know, like for example, we have a few papers going on with, for example, Stefan. So from time to time, we have a meeting about those things. And then, you know, Valerie would remember that we had a few meetings as we were preparing for Singapore. Now it's on hold. So then, you know, meetings with Julia. And so I usually try to put those at the beginning of the day, because at that time I'm still half asleep. And so meetings tend to be a little bit easier to go through than, you know, when you have to actually write. But now I'm thinking about what Stefan said, that he gets the important things done first. And so in my case, I kind of get the meetings first. So any advice on when would it be better to schedule sort of, you know, meetings that may not require 100% concentration, like it would be if you're running like statistical analysis or writing a paper? So is it better to do it in the morning, at night, or is it better to disperse it throughout the day so that you have breaks? Like, any tips on that?
I think I like the latter one you suggest, Was, breaking it up to the day so you don't have the fatigue factor kicking in.
My concern with that would be, and again, I'm not sure if it's just me, but it almost seems like when it comes to writing, for example, you sort of want that uninterrupted, you know, like several hours of what they call deep work. Like you can't just, you know, switch and start writing right away. I mean, it takes a few hours to kind of upload it in your RAM, essentially, in your head. And so I'm a little afraid that if I have meetings like every 2 hours, then it's not enough time between the meetings to get anything serious done. And then so I'm trying to block them, but I'm not sure if morning is the best time for those kinds of things. So I don't know. Any other tips on meetings? Or you don't have that many meetings, you don't have to deal with that kind of.
Boss, I think that all depends on you as a person and who you're dealing with, where they're located around the world too, because when I was going back and forth between North America and China, you know, there's 12 hours time difference between my Canadian office and my office in China. So I could give my staff things to do that I wanted answers by 8 o'clock in the morning, so that then I could actually be able to work on them and get them answers back, so they would have them first thing in their morning. And but if I needed to talk to them, then there's only certain times that you can do that. So I think it all depends on who you're talking to, where they are in the world, that sort of thing. When I was talking to clients who were in the same time zone with me, and that wasn't a problem, I found it was much easier to reach people in the morning than it was at any other time in the day, because usually they were off in other meetings and that sort of thing and had other distractions. Here it's a question of when you're teaching online. I teach from 8 to 10 and then Tuesday mornings, and then from 12 to 2 and 2 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I think it all depends on what's your, personally, what's your most productive time, what your schedule looks like, and how you can work around it. I am a morning person. When my kids were little, I would try and get up before they did, get in a couple of good hours to myself of hard work. You know, then they got up while I had to prepare breakfast or do things like that with them. They knew that if I closed my office door, that they weren't to interrupt mommy unless it was, you know, the house was burning down or something else was happening. But sometimes you have to do that, and you have to have that productive space wherever it is. I also keep a calendar, and so in my calendar for the day, I know I'm going to spend those couple of productive hours first, then I'm going to pause and I'm going to have breakfast and I'm going to do whatever. I may do some exercise, I may go for a walk, whatever. I come back and then I have some meetings. I might have a coffee meeting with some of my colleagues or whatever. Other days I'm teaching during that time. So, you know, I think you have to be flexible, but you need to have a basic plan of what to do and when to do it. I sometimes get so involved with my writing or my work that I forget what time it is. And so I have actually set a little alarm on my computer to remind me that I have to stop to eat. and or to exercise or whatever, because otherwise I might not come up for air until, you know, I suddenly discover at supper time that I'm starving to death because I haven't eaten anything. So I think it all depends on you. You have to know yourself. You have to know what you have to accomplish, but think about others and what's the best time to reach them, and if you have to do that. So that's my suggestions.
All right. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Well, I guess so. Let's stop here. If you have any other suggestions, maybe some links to some useful tools, or maybe some other tips and tricks on how to be productive when working from home, if you can maybe send them to me, I'll compile them, and with your permission, I will share the recording of this session along with those tools and links, and whatever else will go into that catalog. And I don't know, hopefully we will make ourselves a little bit more productive, if only by a few %. So,
Ross, thank you for leading and coordinating this webinar. Appreciate it.
thank you, Michael. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, well, for those of you in Asia, Europe, good night. For those of you in America, hopefully we'll have a productive day, even though it's a Sunday. So. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great time. Bye.
Bye.